Let's get to it. Taking hard line, Greece turns back migrants by abandoning them at sea. Many Greeks have grown frustrated as tens of thousands of asylum seekers languished on Greek islands. Now, evidence shows a new conservative government has a new method of keeping them out. They have migrants aboard an inflatable boat heading to the Greek island of Lesbos. The story comes from Road, Greece. The Greek government has secretly expelled more than 1,000 refugees from Europe's borders in recent months, sailing many of them to the edge of Greek territorial waters and then abandoning them in inflatable and sometimes overburdened life rafts. Since March, at least 1,072 asylum seekers have been dropped at sea by Greek officials in at least 31 separate expulsions, according to an analysis of evidence by the New York Times from 3 independent watchdogs, 2 academic researchers, and the Turkish Coast Guard. The Times have interviewed survivors from 5 of those episodes and reviewed photographic or video evidence from all 31. This is insane. Like, this is fucking unhinged. Like, I can't believe a fucking sovereign nation, part of the EU, nonetheless, is basically yeeting asylum seekers into the fucking ocean. Like, this is unacceptable. This is fucking awful. This is human rights abuse of, like, insane proportions. You can't just fucking yeet asylum seekers into the ocean and be like, well, not our problem anymore. Like, you can't do that. That's not how you treat people. And these people are seeking asylum. They're running away from, like, probably war-ravaged zones where they can't live. Like, this is unacceptable. Just nuts. Ugh. Enraging. It was very inhumane, said Najma al-Khatib, a 50-year-old Syrian teacher who says masked Greek officials took her and 22 others, including 2 babies, under cover of darkness from a detention center on the island of Rhodes on July 26th and abandoned them in a rudderless, motorless life raft before they were rescued by the Turkish Coast Guard. I left Syria for fear of bombing, but when this happened, I wish I died under a bomb, she told the Times. Can you imagine? Can you imagine? Your country is being ravaged by war. Like, Syria is in a terrible, terrible situation. And the situation there is very complicated. It's not like, oh, well, just go there and, like, fight the bad people. Because it's not that simple. There are many factions fighting within Syria. It's a super, super complicated situation. And you leave there because you're like, I'm going to die here. I will die under a bomb if I don't leave. You leave to seek asylum. And then the country where you go is like, fuck you, actually, we're gonna kidnap you and throw you in the ocean. Like, Jesus fucking Christ. Illegal under international law, the expulsions are the most direct and sustained attempt by a European country to block maritime migration using its own forces since the height of the migration crisis in 2015, when Greece was the main thoroughfare for migrants and refugees seeking to enter Europe. The government denied any illegality. Greek authorities not engaging clandestine activities, said a government spokesman, Stelios Petsas. Greece has a proven track record when it comes to observing international law, conventions, and protocols. This includes the treatment of refugees and migrants. This situation is nuts, and this kind of points to the ineffectiveness of international law in many cases. Because countries can just break international law and then not much happens unless it is a country that didn't write those laws. Because the countries who wrote the international laws, they get to break those laws all the time. And nothing happens to them. Nothing happens to them. Because they wrote the law, so, you know, who cares? Like, for example, the US breaks international law all the time. They do war crimes, all of that shit. Nothing ever happens to them, partially because there is a law in the US, or an act, known as Invade the Hague Act. So if a US soldier is taken to international court, the US will invade the Hague This is an actual act that they signed into power. You can look it up. It exists. It's nuts. And that's why international law can be so ridiculous, because it doesn't do much in situations like this, where it's like, oh, we broke international law. Oops. And then nothing happens. Since 2015, European countries like Greece and Italy have mainly relied on proxies like the Turkish and Libyan governments to head off maritime migration. What is different now is that the Greek government is increasingly taking matters into its own hands, watchdog groups and researchers say. For example, migrants have been forced onto sometimes leaky life rafts and left adrift at the border between Turkish and Greek waters, while others have been left adrift in their own boats after Greek officials disabled their engines. These pushbacks are totally illegal in all their aspects in international law and in European law, said Professor François Crépeau, an expert on international law and a former United Nations Special Rapporteur on the human rights of migrants. It is a human rights and humanitarian disaster, Professor Crépeau added. Greeks were once far more understanding of the plight of migrants, but many have grown frustrated and hostile after half-decade which other European countries offered Greece only modest assistance as tens of thousands of asylum seekers languished in squalid camps on overburdened Greek islands. Since the election last year of a new conservative government under Prime Minister Kyriakos Mitsotakis, Greece has taken a far harder line against the migrants, often refugees from the war in Syria, who push off Turkish shores for Europe. The harsher approach comes as tensions have mounted with Turkey, itself burdened with 3.6 million refugees from the Syrian war, far more than any other nation. Greece believes that Turkey has tried to weaponize the migrants to increase pressure on Europe for aid and assistance in the Syrian war, but it has also added pressure on Greece at a time when the two nations and others spar over contested gas fields in the eastern Mediterranean. Dope. For several days in late February and early March, the Turkish authorities openly abused thousands of migrants to the Greek land border in a bid to set off a confrontation leading to the shooting of at least one Syrian refugee and the immediate extrajudicial expulsion of hundreds of migrants who made it to Greek territory. Jesus Christ. This is fucking horrid. Using migrants as pawns in your fight for control over gas fields, like, it's monstrous. For years, Greek officials have been accused of intercepting and expelling migrants on a sporadic and infrequent basis, usually before the migrants manage to land their boats on Greek soil. But experts say Greece's behavior during the pandemic has been far more systematic and coordinated. Hundreds of migrants have been denied the right to seek asylum even after they have landed on Greek soil, and they've been forbidden to appeal their expulsion through legal system. They've seized the moment, Professor Crépeau said of the Greeks. Coronavirus has provided a window of opportunity to close national borders to whoever they've wanted. Emboldened by the lack of sustained criticism from the European Union, where the migration issue has roiled politics, Greece has hardened its approach in the eastern Mediterranean in recent months. Migrants landing from the Greek islands from Turkey have frequently been forced onto sometimes leaky, inflatable life rafts, dropped at the boundary between Turkish and Greek waters, and left adrift until being spotted and rescued by the Turkish Coast Guard. This practice is totally unprecedented in Greece, said Niam Kidi Tabal, a doctoral researcher at the Irish Centre for Human Rights and one of the first to document the phenomenon. Greek authorities are now weaponizing rescue equipment to illegally expel asylum seekers in a new, violent, and highly visible pattern of pushbacks spanning several Aegean islands, Ms. Kidi Tabal said. Ms. Al-Khatib, who recounted her ordeal for The Times, said she entered Turkey last November with her two sons, 14 and 12, fleeing the advance of the Syrian army. Her husband, who had entered several weeks earlier, soon died of cancer, Ms. Al-Khatib said. Terrible. I can't even imagine what type of trauma these experiences cause on someone. I can't even imagine. It must be horrible. With few prospects in Turkey, the family tried to reach Greece by boat 3 times this summer, failing once in May because their smuggler did not show up, and a second time in June after being intercepted in Greek waters and towed back to the Turkish sea border, she said. On the third attempt, on July 23rd around 7 a.m., they landed on the Greek island of Rhodes, Ms. Al-Khatib said. an account corroborated by 4 other passengers interviewed by the Times. They were detained by Greek police officers and taken to a small makeshift detention facility after handing over the identification documents. Jesus Christ. Because here's the thing. There is a process of seeking asylum that the UN has basically set out. The way that it works is you go to the country that you want to seek asylum in, you go to the border, and you say, hey, I'm seeking asylum. And basically the border guards have to say, all right, and then you have to go to the nearest designated place where you can go to seek asylum. Usually it is fairly close to the border for obvious reasons. And then you go to seek asylum and you're given a temporary visa while your asylum application is being processed. You get a temporary visa, and then they either say yes or no, and then that's how it should go. Not like this, where they come to the country and then they're immediately detained and just yeeted. Not like this. Using footage filmed at the site by 2 passengers, a Times reporter was able to identify the facility's location beside the island's main ferry port and visit the camp. A Coast Guard officer and an official at the island's mayoralty both said the site falls under the jurisdiction of the port police, an arm of the Hellenic Coast Guard. A Palestinian refugee living in a disused slaughterhouse beside the camp confirmed that Miss Al-Khatib had been there, recounting how he had spoken to her through the camp's fence and bought her tablets to treat her hypertension, which Greek officials had refused to supply her. On the evening of July 26, Miss Al-Khatib and the other detainees said that the police officer had loaded them onto a bus, telling them they were being taken to a camp on another island and then to Athens. Instead, masked Greek officials transferred them to 2 vessels that ferried them out to the sea before dropping them on rafts at the Turkish maritime border, she and other survivors said. Amid choppy waves, the group, which included 2 babies, was forced to drain the raft using their hands as water slopped over the sides, they said. The group was rescued at 4:30 a.m. by the Turkish Coast Guard, according to a report by the Coast Guard that included a photograph of Miss Al-Khatib as she left the life raft. Miss Al-Khatib tried to reach Greece for a 4th time on August 6th, but said her boat was stopped off the island of Lesbos by Greek officials who moved its fuel and towed it back to Turkish water. Some groups of migrants have been transferred to the life rafts even before landing on Greek soil. This is so unhinged. Like, I can't believe a European country, part of the EU, is just treating people like cargo, basically. They're treating them like, this is not how you treat human beings. We can't treat human beings like this. Like, this is just so unhinged. Like, just yeeting them into the middle of the ocean, being like, well, not our problem anymore. And not letting them seek asylum and putting them in encampments with... I just can't fucking believe it. On May 13, Amjad Naim, a 24-year-old Palestinian law student, was among a group of 30 migrants intercepted by Greek officials as they approached the shores of Samos, a Greek island close to Turkey. The migrants were quickly transferred to 2 small life rafts that began to deflate under the weight of so many people, Mr. Naim said. Transferred to 2 other rafts, they were then towed back toward Turkey. Videos captured by Naim on his phone show the 2 rafts being tugged across the sea by a large white vessel. Footage subsequently published by the Turkish Coast Guard shows the same 2 rafts being rescued by Turkish officials later in the day. Migrants have also been left to drift in the boats they arrived on, after Greek officials disabled their engines, survivors and researchers say. And on at least 2 occasions, migrants have been abandoned on Siplak, an uninhabited island within Turkish waters, instead of being placed on life rafts. Eventually, the Turkish Coast Guard came to fetch us, said one Palestinian survivor who was among a group of abandoned on Siplak in early July, and who sent videos of their time on the island. A reporter from the Turkish Coast Guard corroborated his accounts. In parallel, several rights organizations, including Human Rights Watch, have documented how the Greek authorities have rounded up migrants living legally in Greece and secretly expelled them without legal recourse across the Evros River, which divides mainland Greece from Turkey. Feras Fato, a 30-year-old Syrian X-ray technician, said he was arrested by Greek police on July 24th in Igoumenitsa, a port in western Greece. Mr. Fato had been living legally in Greece since November 2019 with his wife and son and showed the Times documents to prove it. But after being detained by the police in Igoumenitsa, Mr. Fato said he was robbed and driven about 400 miles east of the Turkish border before being secretly put on a dinghy with 18 others and sent across the river to Turkey. His wife and son remain in Greece. Like, this is fucking nuts. Like, this is what happened in like Finland in, when the fuck was it, when political rivals were like basically beaten the fuck up and then thrown across the border to Russia. Like, this is kind of like that, but like, this person was living there legally and they came and kidnapped him away from his family and then threw him basically across the border. Like, this is extremely unethical and also extremely illegal. Like, I don't care which side of the political spectrum you fall, you have to agree that the police coming to take a legally living person in the country, this isn't even an illegal immigrant, this is a migrant who's living there legally, them coming over and taking him, driving him to the border and just like, goodbye. Like, that can't be okay. We can't allow that to happen. Like, this is not okay. This is so wrong. Syrians are suffering in Turkey, Mr. Fato said. We're suffering in Greece. Where are we supposed to go? Ylva Johansson, who oversees migration policy at the European Commission, the civil service of the European Union, said she was concerned by the accusations but had no power to investigate them. We cannot protect our European border by violating European values and by breaching people's rights, Mr. Johansson said in an email. Border control can and must go hand in hand with respect for fundamental rights. That is the end of the article. So here's where, like, the weakness of international law comes into play. The European Union can't do anything about this, essentially. What Ylva Johansson was saying. That, yeah, they're breaking international law, but the European Union can basically say, hey, that's not nice. And this is one of the weaknesses of the European Union, is that since it is a trade union, essentially, these types of things where people's human rights are being violated flagrantly and openly, the European Union can't really do anything about it, which is really unfortunate. And that is a problem that we have with Poland, because Poland has become increasingly conservative and right-wing, especially how it treats LGBTQ people. But the European Union can't do anything about it because another country that has become increasingly right-wing, Hungary, is basically saying that we're not going to kick Poland out, and Poland is saying we're not going to kick Hungary out of the European Union, which puts the European Union in a deadlock, because if the member states want to kick out another member state, all the member states, except the one that they want to kick out, have to agree unanimously to kick out a member state. And because Poland and Hungary are basically saying we have each other's back, the European Union can't do anything. And it's the same thing here with Greece. Like, Greece is doing terrible human rights violations by tossing people into the sea and expelling legal migrants from the country with no right. And the European Union just says, oh, well, this is bad. Like, this sucks. This is really, really shit. Like, what should be done? I'm not really sure. I'm not really sure what the right course of action here is. That's the hard part, right? Like, I'm not saying, like, fucking invade Greece. Like, no. It's not the right answer here, is to, like, invade Greece. And then, like, sanctions, of course, could be an option, but I don't think you can do that because they're part of the European Union, so can't do that. But yeah, it's such a difficult situation because, like, what can other countries do? They're part of the European Union, so and we can't cut them out of that. So what can we do? This is terrible. This is so heartbreaking. People coming from terrible war-torn regions, which, funnily enough, the Western nations have a big part in why the region is so destabilized. And they try to come here, the West, to seek a better life, and then the West is like, don't come here. Like, why are you coming here? We don't want you here. Go back to the destabilized region, which we fucked up partially. Really cool of us to do that kind of stuff. So this is the story. Greece is doing terrible human rights abuses. They're treating migrants like, not even like cattle, like cargo, yeeting them in the ocean, ripping them from their homes in Greece, even though when they're legally there, away from their families, across the border to Turkey, and saying, fucking figure it out, Turkey. Be aware that this is happening in Greece. It sucks. Artagro, if we had a mechanism to spread the asylum seekers throughout the EU, which we are supposed to have, maybe Greece wouldn't need to do something like this. Yeah, I wish we had a better way of dealing with asylum seekers as a whole in the EU, but it is country to country, or country based, because like each country can decide how many asylum seekers they take in, right? Like Germany took a lot of asylum seekers back in 2015 when there was the big surge of refugees from Syria. Man, that was 5 years ago. Damn. Yeah. It would be, I think, good if we had some kind of centralized mechanism so we can make sure that one country doesn't become like overburdened with migrants, because of course, like when migrants come in, it has to be done sustainably and in a way that it doesn't overload the system at once. But it's of course it's difficult because some, like Greece is in a pivotal spot where a lot of people are coming through there, so it is of course not an easy solution. Abolish nations, crush capitalism, take care of people. Yes, Ida, I agree. The end goal is a classless, moneyless, nationless society. I thought we took maybe 200 and it was too much. Yeah, I mean, Finland didn't even take that many people during the 2015 thing. I'm deodating so hard. Yeah, you did typo quite nicely. Yeah, Finland didn't take that many. Like, Sweden took way more. Germany took a shit ton. And Germany, from what I understand, is doing okay. Yeah, this is... Ugh. I hated that asylum seeking and immigration is such a difficult topic, because like I try to come at all this stuff from like an empathetic point of view. So, you know, people are coming from war-torn regions, which European countries had a part in fucking it up, and they want to come to said European countries now because their country is now fucked up. I think they should be able to come in. Of course, you know, some security is needed, yes, because people are going to be like, ISIS, It's like, yes, we need to take care of some security. Yes, I understand. But if they want to come into the country to live and to work, they should be able to do that. That's it. And then, of course, we need mechanisms to make sure that the people can integrate into the society, learn the language, get a job, etc., so that people don't get isolated and form cliques that keep them isolated from the rest of the nation, because then they become secluded, and then there becomes tension between the two groups, and those are of course big challenges, and they aren't easy, but it's something that we need to invest into more. You can't agree hard enough with the separation of groups when immigrants come in. Yeah, I think that's one of the big reasons why, for example, here in Sweden, there have been problems with migrants because that integration hasn't been successful. Rather, they have been put into low-income housing areas, and then they formed cliques and ghettos, and then it's really hard for them to exit from there. Yeah, I mean, just like with the Swedish ghettos, yes. And I guess I say that as someone who's partly living it here in good old Suomi. Yes. But even Finland has that area. Like, we have certain areas, for example, in Helsinki, like Eastern Helsinki is low income, and it is more ghetto. I wouldn't call it ghetto, but it is more ghetto, because it is like, here's the low income housing, which, as we have seen in the US and many other countries, having specific areas for low income housing creates problems, because then it creates this separation between wealth classes. So something better would be to have low income mixed with normal income housing, for example. It's not a ghetto, but people definitely think of Kontula and it is as a lesser. Absolutely, yes. And I mean, big part why there are immigrants in those areas are because they are low income areas. So people who come into the country with no connections or very few connections and have to get a probably rudimentary job at first because they don't know language, etc., can afford to live there. Those places are also not coincidentally where the harm reduction centers are located. Exactly. And those are the areas the police go to, and etc., etc., etc. Hello there, and thank you very much for watching this video. If you liked it, please hit the like button and subscribe to my channel for future videos. Also, if you have any questions, feel free to drop them down below in the comments, or you can visit my stream on Twitch where I can answer any of your questions. I stream every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 6 p.m. Central European Time. We talk about news and games, news in the world from a leftist point of view, and also play some games. Come hang out with us, it'll be fun. Bye!